You're listening to Sarah Talk. It's political.
You could run a fucking pet rock against Donald Trump, and I would vote for the pet rock.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right
Yeah.
Critical.
One of the things that drives me nuts as an atheist is that my polling location is at a church. And I don't necessarily have a problem. I'm not going to like burst into flames walking into a church.
After being on this show and having heard your viewpoints on some things, my advice to you is don't test this. I won't burst into flames.
And positively LGBT positive.
In many states, you can still be evicted from housing simply for being gay or transgender. Stand and fight with us.
Oh, and occasionally completely absurd.
Oh, they're shutting us down. They're deplatforming us. I do a pretty good Alex Jones voice. They're turning the frogs gay.
Okay, you're sleeping in a child's room tonight because there's no way you're sleeping next to me. That is disgusting. I'm going to have nightmares.
And now, from Orlando, Florida, your host, Sarah Austin.
Hey everybody, welcome to SarahTalk.
Oh, that's funny.
I am Sarah Austin.
You sure you're not Alex Jones?
Well, I might be.
Yikes.
When I need to be. My lovely wife Becca in studio.
Hold on a minute.
What? What's up?
Dan.
You get the volume up.
Oh, crap, I do. Dan says something in chat, but I can't see it all.
Oh my God. Dan said tonight's broadcast has been delayed to technical difficulties. Becca cannot get enough alcohol consumed by 8 p.m. Becca has joined us.
I have my mini bottles. And I'll tell you something. It's been about 10 years since I've drank any of this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I used to like just do shots.
Uh-huh.
And I took one little and I went, whoo, that's stronger than I remember.
Oh.
So sorry. Oh, is that our
I think-
guest? Oh, stand by.
Yeah, it looks like we might have our guest on the line. Stand by with us here. You're gonna have to kill some time.
Okay, I'll kill time. La 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 la. Baby shark doo doo doo.
Sam, great. Hang on just a second. We'll get you right on, okay? Alrighty.
That's all I got.
Oh no, keep singing Baby Shark. Why
I
did
don't
you
want
stop?
to sing Baby Shark. I hate that song.
Okay, so Dan says my Alex Jones voice is terrifying. I thought it was great. I thought it was good enough to make it to the intro, obviously.
It was hilarious.
So there you go.
Oh, anyway.
Okay, hey, so we have a guest on the line with us tonight.
Woohoo.
We're going to be talking about well, let me just read the intro.
There you go. That's a great idea.
Protect LDS Children is an initiative started by Sam Young to bring visibility and change to the sexually explicit interviews with children conducted in private by bishops and other leaders. Private, and we've talked about this before, private, closed-door, one-on-one, sexually explicit interviews with older men in the church formerly known as Mormon. Sam is father of 6 daughters, a business owner, and has served in various roles in the LDS Church over the past few decades, including bishop, bishopric counselor, ward mission leader, stake public affairs director, and seminary teacher, as well as a whole host of other roles that he has had. And he's joining us tonight to discuss his experiences in this effort to influence change. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Well, I'm delighted to be on your show. Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, I appreciate you coming in short notice, too. We pulled this thing together at the last minute, emailing back and forth, and I appreciate it.
So is this a live broadcast?
It is. We're live on Facebook, and then
live on Facebook, okay.
And then it becomes a podcast after the live show. Yeah. So this is a topic that we sort of discuss on the show a lot here. But let's go back and let's start a little bit with your own journey. Were you raised in the Mormon church, or how did you come to the church?
I was raised in the Mormon church. I was baptized at 8.
Okay.
Yeah, and hit all the benchmarks
Right.
of Boy on a Mission, BYU, married in the temple, and so on.
Right. So as a child yourself, growing up in the church, were you subjected to these sorts of interviews yourself?
Well, was subject to interviews that were all alone with the bishop,
Mm-hmm.
but there was never ever a sexually explicit question. I was never asked, do I masturbate?
Right. And then you have served yourself as a bishop, right? So in that capacity, you would have been in the position of having to conduct these interviews, right?
That's correct. So I met with the kids regularly,
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one. Now, this is in the 90s, and so one-on-one
Okay.
interviews had not really, we didn't realize how dangerous they were. The society hadn't realized that yet. It wasn't, I think at the end of my tenure, things started to come up, but it wasn't until the early 2000s when the Scouts and other organizations started to eliminate those. But I was never trained to ask sexually explicit questions. Since I didn't experience myself, I never did. I never
Sure.
thought, why should I be doing that?
Was it going on earlier than we may think, and just no one had really known about it, or did something change?
I think it's hard. So, Sarah, you realize that our church is pretty non-transparent.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get a gauge on when and why things happen. So I know it was happening at that time because there are people my age that were subjected to it. I know people that are 70 years old who were subjected to this.
Wow.
So I would guess it started happening in the 60s and probably started in earnest in the 70s. What I know is, I think it's in the 60s, a talk was given by an apostle in General Conference where he actually called out the bishops for being for asking sexually explicit questions. So it was on their radar enough that they talked about it at General Conference, but it was never talked about since then. So I believe in the 60s it somehow got started.
Okay. Now, before we get too far here, let's talk about some of the questions that come up during these interviews. And I'm aware of some of the examples. I have a short list here, but feel free to take the lead. And I'll pause before we mention this. Imagine yourself, dear listener, at, 13, 14, 15 years old, or your own child being asked questions like this. Now we're talking about stuff like, do you masturbate, right? Have you been kissed? Have you kissed? Were you sitting up or laying down? Was any clothing off? Have you had oral sex? Had you had intercourse? Did it feel good? Right? These are the kinds of things that come up sometimes. And the one that really surprised me was, are you surprised by what happens when boys orgasm? Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Being a child and being asked that question. Can you imagine asking a child in this setting that question? Is that...
Are you asking me the question? Can I imagine that?
that was a little rhetorical for the listeners. But is that kind of hitting the nail on the head there of the tone of some of this questioning?
Absolutely. See, what I got energized about this campaign when I heard that my daughter, I've got 6 daughters. One of my daughters was living at home when this started coming out, and I asked her if she was ever asked, and she said, yes, Dad, I was asked at age 12, do I masturbate?
What?
Whoa.
To ask my child if she masturbates, that is none of anybody's business. So just that question alone, to me, is highly offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go way beyond that.
If it's okay with you, I pulled a couple of, and I summarized some stories that have been published on the Protect LDS Children website. And of course, I won't mention any identifying information. One said their 11, almost 12-year-old son had been asked if he was ever asked to change his baby sister's diapers, and then followed that up with, did it trigger sexual feelings when you wiped her?
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Another writes that she was asked who she was dating, what kind of men she felt attractive, and why, whether she kept the law of chastity, which is, the scripted generic question that leads to the more detailed ones that are not scripted. But then went on to further ask, or if you haven't kept the law of chastity, how you didn't, did it feel good, and so on. Now, let's pause a moment here for the law of chastity, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is this is a moral code that says sexual relations are proper only between a man and a woman who are legally and lawfully wedded as husband and wife. I got that right?
Well, I think it depends on who you're talking to. This is a problem in our church. I always thought the law of chastity, I didn't think a lot about it, but I thought it was pretty cut and dried. It's not cut and dried. For an adult that's married, the law of chastity defined in the temple is to have no sexual relations outside of a legal and lawful marriage.
Okay.
So, well, that's pretty narrow.
Mm-hmm.
But the information that is given to the kids is broad, like you shouldn't think about sex.
Right.
You shouldn't masturbate. You shouldn't. Well, so where is it? You shouldn't touch the girl's boobs. The girl shouldn't touch the guy's penis. You shouldn't get aroused. Where is the limit here? I mean, it starts all the way with having thoughts about sex.
Mm-hmm. So,
can an adult masturbate? Well, I had a discussion in my congregation, and the adult men. Do you have any connection with Mormonism at all?
No.
Okay, no. Okay, so we have a general meeting with everybody. Then we have a Sunday school where the kids meet, and then we have a meeting where it's the men and women are divided, and the children are divided too. So in our men's meeting, one day I brought up this question a couple of years ago because I wanted to know, these things are getting on the radar. What is the law of chastity for adults? And because all it says in the temple is that you have no relations with women that you're not married to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked, is masturbation, I had always thought masturbation was a sin.
Right.
And so I asked the question, is this, just on this definition, is masturbation a sin? We discussed it for half an hour, and it was kind of uncomfortable because I've never had an open discussion about that topic, and neither had they. The consensus was it's not a sin, as long as you check in with your wife first. But I thought, okay, so if you just go to get married in the temple, it seems like the law of chastity is really narrow. But the poor kids, it's open to everything.
Right. And as a queer, sex-positive, humanist atheist, that just makes my blood boil. Like, it's clear from mountains of research in psychology and definitely from the stories that have been submitted to your website, very little good comes from the idea of, keeping kids in the dark about sexuality in every possible way until they're married. And then we layer on some guilt and shame that religion, and it's not just Mormons, of course. We talk about Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses and Catholics and others. Broadly speaking, religion stifles healthy human sexuality. Look, it's not bad to touch yourself. What's bad is telling a child that touching themselves is a sin next to murder.
Oh, yeah. That really messes with a kid's psyche.
It's absolutely insane.
So at age 12, so these interviews are done in earnest from age 12 until age 17, age 18. I'm concerned about minors. So age 18, I'm not lobbying for that. It's age 12 to 17. Their understanding of sexuality is just in the process of developing.
Yeah.
and by subjecting them to gross, explicit questions and shaming them, they wrap shame around sexuality. And by the time they're an adult and they get married, many times the consequences of these type of interviews are that they're screwed up in their sexual relationships with their spouse. That's a big result of this.
Sure.
But yeah, the shame is a big problem. And I didn't even know what shame was until a year ago.
Wow.
As I'm in this. So guilt is believing that you have done something bad. Shame is believing that you are bad. Not that you've just done something bad, that you are bad.
Yeah.
And that's the shame. And when you have these kind of interviews with a power figure that represents God of all things, and a kid that looks to that authority as an authority, whatever they say is accurate, if that just the questions and statements, they really can throw a lot of shame on that kid to where they self-loathe. So they start to hate themselves in their teenage years, and they take that self-loathing often into their adult years, and it can last decades. I mean, I've had people write stories in their 70s, and they're saying they're still coping with the shame they felt as a kid.
Wow. And that all affects, the happy, healthy marriage that you're supposed to be entering into also, like if you're carrying that stuff around, that's affecting every part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, this, you mentioned queer and stuff. I don't have all that terminology down.
That's all right.
But so we can be open about that here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a trans person, and I'm happy to, like, part of what prompted this show was for me to explain my transition and help people understand what that was all about. And we talk about terminology and processes and community stuff all the time. Yeah.
So I'd never met a transgender person until about maybe 2 years ago online. I'd never met a transgender person in person until this year. Prior to maybe 3 years ago, I would have viewed a transgender person as, how society has looked at transgender people in the past.
Oh, yeah.
That's the way I did. Okay.
Yep, sure.
And but all that has changed today. Fortunately, I mean, I feel like I'm living a great period of time in our history where people, human beings, are valued for who they are. I know we're not quite there yet in all of society, but it is moving in that direction. And so for me to look at somebody who is gay or lesbian or transgender, my heavens, it's a glorious thing to look at God's creations, or however we were created, that the diversity is a marvelous thing.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because, as one of the things we often discuss on this show, a lot of that, as I always say, anytime there's an attack on the LGBTQ community, it comes from either someone wearing a MAGA hat, someone holding a Bible, or more often both. And so,
what's a MAGA hat?
The Make America Great Again Trump hat.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
So often when we get, when people are lobbing attacks our way, it's coming from the religious right, basically. Yeah. And so I have often said for religions all religions to stay relevant, they're going to have to, forgive the pun, evolve on some issues.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, this interview process. Yeah. It hurts. It doesn't hurt everybody, and not all bishops are doing it, but all bishops are supposed to ask about the law of chastity, which does open up all kinds of things. But it really hurts the LGBT people. And I don't know, you may not have read this story, but it was submitted a couple months ago now I have several wonderful transgender friends, and that's a blessing to me that they're my friends.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that.
So one of them shared her story a couple of months ago and said that he had never, or she had never, and see, I keep getting messed up on those terms, but she said that she had never shared this with anybody before she wrote it on the website. But here's what happened, and you can understand this better than somebody that's straight all his life, that he was trying to come to terms with what was going on in as a kid, that he wanted to be a boy, but he didn't feel like he was a boy, but he wanted to become a boy. So the bishops interview him, and the bishop asks if he masturbates. He did not know what that meant. And expressed that, and the bishop said, well, come on, you know what it means. All boys do that. Once the bishop said all boys do that, that meant in his head, I will be a boy if I masturbate. So it became a compulsion for him. It became a huge problem. I mean, I don't believe masturbation is a sin, but, everything should be done. If something's going to be done, it should be done in moderation and in private and so on. But it became a huge problem for him. So then once he's masturbating and he's not having feelings that he's a boy, something is really wrong with him. And now he's got the shame attached to it because every time he interviews the bishop and he's asking about masturbation, he either lies about it and just feels bad or doesn't lie about it. And he's, restrictions are... frequently, the bishops will limit the participation of the boy or girl in certain functions in the church. And it's obvious, like the boys pass the sacrament. If you can't pass the sacrament, well, something's wrong, or you can't partake of the sacrament. So now you're shamed in front of everybody. Yep. So there's so many. You mentioned the diaper story. I'd never heard of anything like that either. I had never heard of this. The transgender friend of mine, her story. I'd never heard of anything like that. But your heart goes out, and we have untrained men being putting behind closed doors to talk about sex, and it is disastrous in so many cases.
So let's jump back into the timeline a little bit here. So you had this experience with your daughter that led you to becoming an activist.
Correct.
So talk through that a little bit. How did you go from, okay, I'm really kind of angry about this, to I'm going to do something about this?
So it didn't take me long to go from anger to action. In fact, it may have been one day. I started to hear that there was bishops talking about masturbation with kids, but it didn't register with me. It had never been part of my experience. It wasn't anybody I knew personally. And then in March of last year, a good friend of mine told me a story of his child being asked if he masturbated. The dad happened to be sitting in the hallway while his son was being interviewed behind the closed door. His son runs out and said, "Dad, the bishop just asked me if I masturbate and if I have sex with other boys."
Whoa.
The dad walked in, who is my friend, walked in and looked at the bishop and said, "If you ever ask my son a question like that, I will beat you to a pulp."
Good.
Well, they quit going to church.
Yep.
But my kids were being raised in that very same congregation at the same time. And I didn't talk to my daughter immediately after that. I simply put out on Facebook, has anybody else had the experience of being asked about masturbation? I got a ton of people that responded yes. It took a couple of months before I had the courage, because I'd never said the word masturbation before to any of my 6 daughters.
Yeah.
And so a couple months go by, and I'm getting all these stories. I then asked her if she had been asked the question, and she said yes. I didn't know what it was, Dad. I asked my friends. They didn't know what it was. So I went to the internet, and I found what it was, how to do it, and I found pornography, Dad. I was incensed that this had been done to my child. And so then I started writing blogs. I was very naive. I thought once people knew that this is a common practice, that my fellow church members would stand up and say, yeah, we got to cut this out. We got to we just need to cut this out. And in today's society, one-on-one meetings with older men, untrained, that's a danger just in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I was very naive. I kept writing blog after blog. I kept getting story after story. And as people started to feel safe that they could express something to me, and I'm not going to be blabbing, hey, this was Fred Smith, and look what happened to him, and here's his phone number and email.
Yeah.
When they started to realize that I was respectful and that it was a safe place, the stories, even more egregious stories, continued to come out. But it was once I found out it happened to my daughter, I was really upset. It turned out that 4 of my 6 daughters were asked sexually explicit questions.
Gosh. Which I guess, should not be terribly surprising, given that it's all in the same, in the same church ward with the same bishopric.
Right.
Well,
right?
it turns out those 4, only one of them were asked a sexually explicit question as a youth in my congregation. The other 3 were asked after they moved out of the house, had moved away to college, and so the other 3 were 2 were 18 and 1 was 19 when they were asked. Now at that point they're adults, but I don't give a damn about it. These are my kids.
Right.
What are you doing asking these kind of questions?
And it's still very private information. I don't care what the,
Yeah.
like if they believed it was a sin, then they have the right to go and seek guidance, but to be,
Prompted.
interrogated.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's,
Right. Now you're going up against an alarmingly large organization, and so one of the solutions that you have been championing is because obviously it's going to be nigh impossible to just say, hey, stop interviewing kids, just quit, just stop asking these questions. So there has to be some sort of accountability in that, because we know the interviews are going to continue to take place. So how can we make sure that they are appropriate interviews, right? So one of the solutions that I've heard you talk about, that you want to get these interviews changed so that either a parent or another trusted adult of the child's choosing be in these interviews. And it appears that in June of this year, new light rained down from the first presidency in the form of a letter and revised guidelines for interviewing youth, which very slightly changes some of the standard questions asked, but also in section 7.4, disgustingly titled Protecting Against Misunderstandings.
oh my.
It says this, quote, when a member of a bishopric or stake presidency or another assigned leader meets with a child, youth, or woman, he or she should ask a parent or another adult to be in an adjoining room, foyer, or hall, as if being just outside the closed-door meeting is helpful. But then it goes on to say, if the person being interviewed desires, another adult may be invited to be in the present during the interview. Leaders should avoid all circumstances that could be misunderstood. So they almost got there, it sounds like.
Well, actually,
Begrudgingly, it sounds like.
Yeah.
There is only one change there. The first part that you read, that they should invite a parent or another adult to be in an adjoining room, that's already been in the policy.
Right.
But that really means it's a one-on-one.
Yeah.
They should invite somebody to be out in the hall, not in with the kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's been in place for a good while. But here's a big problem with that statement right there. And they should invite a parent or another adult. Here's the way that it works in practicality.
Okay.
The bishop's busy. He needs to interview the child, or one of the counselors needs to interview the child. You just go get the child and pull them into your office, because right next door to the bishop's office is the clerk's office. There's always an adult sitting in that clerk's office. So you never
Oh,
have
my
to invite
gosh.
any parent. You don't have to notify anybody. There's somebody already sitting in that office, or there's somebody already roaming the halls. If it's during the 3 hours that we spend at church, there's somebody in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no requirement. There's not even a recommendation that you invite a parent. It's you should invite a parent or another adult to be in an adjoining room. There's nothing that says it should, that the parent is the default.
Right.
The default is you don't do anything, you just bring the kid in. But the real change was the second sentence there, second or third, whatever it was, where it says if the woman or child desires,
Right.
another person can be. So that was a change, and that's a good change, but that's going to eliminate about 0.5% of the interviews being one-on-one,
Right.
because the kids, they don't know that.
Right.
They
Are they
need
going
to
to know that
protect
that's even an
themselves.
option? Right. Yeah.
And
The bishop may tell them, and I have heard of bishops telling the kids that they can invite somebody, but very few kids are. Again,
Yeah.
you're dealing with a power figure. Am I going to offend him if I don't? Am I sending a signal I
Right.
don't trust
Yeah.
him? Or I don't want to be the only person inviting my mommy to come into that interview. So there's peer pressure against
Sure.
it.
yeah.
So it's a change. The only good thing that it does is it signals to smart parents, parents that are alert, that they can go in on the interview. So that there are parents now that are insisting that they be in the interview. Again, it's a very small percentage,
Yep.
but it's difficult for a bishop to turn them down.
Yeah. It's a start.
And then, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a start. It's a start, and I will recognize that start.
Mm-hmm.
But frankly, if I had children, I'd be looking at the bishop saying, "This is offensive to me, that you're going to ask my child. Never ask me to be there. You're going to ask my child if he wants somebody. No, I am the adult.
Yep.
Yeah.
I am the one that makes the judgment as to whether or not they say what needs to be done for their safety. And so I am going. It's you have no. You do not have the authority here. I am the parent." And then the last thing it says that they should do things to avoid the appearance of. Do you want to read that again?
Yeah. Leaders should avoid all circumstances that could be misunderstood.
Yeah. Well, what a joke that is.
Yeah.
How, we're going to take the kids one-on-one, all alone, behind a closed door. We're going to talk to them about sex, but we're not going to do anything that would appear inappropriate. Now, come on.
Yeah.
You're doing exactly opposite of what you just said not to do.
Mhm.
Yep. Now I want to sidebar down a side road here for just a moment.
Really?
And talk about shush.
She does that a lot.
And talk about abuses within the church, because it's very closely related to this. Now, we talked last week with McKenna Denson about the grooming and sexual assault claims that she's brought against Joseph Bishop and the cover-up by church leaders, right? So there's this culture built up of secrecy and shame, and all too often we hear stories of children who are taken advantage of by adults in the church, often church leaders who are using their positions of power and authority. So are some of these leaders using this interview process in a predatory way to identify potential victims?
Absolutely. So we're talking about a small percent.
Sure.
The Catholic Church is in big trouble.
Yeah, they
I
are.
think I've seen estimates that it's 6% of the priests that
Yeah.
were pedophiles.
Yeah.
Well, 6%, that means 94%, the vast majority were not pedophiles. Well, it's the vast majority in our church that are not pedophiles too.
Mhm.
But we got pedophiles, and there have been many bishops that have been arrested, convicted, sent to prison. You got the McKenna Denson example that there's a sexual predator. That definitely happens. There are many stories on our website where the child was assaulted in the bishop's office, or assaulted by the first council or second council or somebody else that they were groomed for by the bishop. So absolutely, we're no different than any other religion in that or any other organization, that there are pedophiles. and everybody else has put protections in place so that it's less likely that the pedophile has the access to groom, or it's a lot harder for them to do it. But in our church, hey, go behind closed doors, talk about sex. We're going to groom you, or we're going to allow the pedophiles to groom. So yes, that absolutely happens.
Yeah, and having this other adult in the room would definitely stave off a lot of that.
Yeah,
that's correct.
So back to the interviews themselves, and I think so. Talking about, like, you know, having another adult in the room, I think and I am not the LDS expert here, but I'll use words that I've learned. So for things like the priesthood, the temple recommend, you know, pre-mission type interviews, which I think are all a bit odd and unnecessary in the first place. But I feel like those, maybe having another adult in the room, would definitely help keep children from being put in a position of being alone with a man asking probing questions. But when it comes to reporting the sex abuse, you know, we're talking about a kid going into a church leader to potentially, you know, say something that's happened in their life, or if the church leader is the aggressor. Only 28 states in the U.S. and Guam specifically include clergy in their mandatory reporting laws, and even though the information that came out of this recent Catholic scandal that we talked about shows that they blatantly ignore those laws.
Oh, yeah.
That leaves a lot of states where religious exemptions have been carved out in the law in one way or another to not require clergy to report knowledge of suspicion of a sex crime to authorities. And I feel like this is something that needs to be changed too, right? Like, we can't allow church leaders who have, you said it, who have no formal training
Right.
in any of this stuff, to handle, you know, just wing it and handle it internally. That was a bit of a rant.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
a big problem. Yeah, and as far as the laws go, I'm not an expert on the laws, but the next soon we'll be taking a look at that exact thing.
Yeah.
If the church is not willing to make changes to protect our kids, we'll fine. Then we'll start taking a look at what we can do in the political sphere.
So, Protect LDS Children, you talk about some of the things that you've done so far. And I'm thinking of things like the petition and the march and
Okay.
that sort of thing.
So I started off by writing a bunch of blog articles, thinking, you know, once people know, we'll stop that. Well, that didn't get much traction at all. So actually it did. It got a lot of people interested, but as far as the church changing anything, it didn't do anything. So then I started a petition. That was October 31st. I wanted to get 10,000 signatures. People told me you'll never get that. And if you do, it means nothing. The church isn't going to pay any attention to you. But I went ahead and did the petition because even if the church doesn't pay attention, there's a lot of good things that a petition does for a movement. It gained maybe 1,500, close to 2,000 signatures over the first month, and I was writing blogs regularly, and every time I'd write a blog, I'd get maybe 100 or 200 more signatures. Finally, I realized I'm going to have to write 80 more blogs.
You're doing the math.
I don't have time to write that.
Right.
And so I did an action. I went up to Salt Lake City, and we set up right across the street from Temple Square, right across the iconic symbol of the Mormon religion, Salt Lake Temple, and had a couple picket signs. It was me and my 87-year-old mom, and we set up to gather signatures. And that was a pivotal event because we got press coverage. One of the TV stations came out and did an article on us, a story on us, and that really boosted things. Then SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, they were very significant in helping the bring to light the scandals of the Catholic Church in the early 2000s. Anyway, they came out and backed us and gave a great statement about our interview practices. And we started to have signatures pour in. By Christmas Eve, we had our 10,000 signatures.
Wow.
We then put together a website because I at that point I probably had 1,000 stories that people submitted to me, but I didn't have a good way of keeping track of them, and I didn't have permission to post them anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So started the website, started gathering stories. We now have 850 stories on the website. And I still have maybe 3,000 stories besides that that I have. But again, they're not, I can't post those. But
sure.
And then we decided we would take those, print those stories in books that we would deliver to the top authorities of the church, the First Presidency and the Apostles. I'd written them. I tried talking to my local leaders, my regional leaders. That went nowhere, and you have no access to the top leaders. And that's why I decided to do the march. So we went to Salt Lake City. 1,000 people showed up. We had a rally where we had several speakers, and then they closed off the main streets of downtown Salt Lake City for us.
That's great.
They initially said, look, you just walk on the sidewalks and we'll have you need to hire some police officers and we'll provide police officers. And, but once they saw how many people we had showed up, they closed off the road, the street, the 6 blocks that we walked up to, the church headquarters. It was just a marvelous event. We delivered the books. No authority came out to greet us. They sent a really nice lady, that works for their public affairs. And we dropped off the books. We found out later that they were actually delivered to the apostles, and one apostle sent a message to me through my local leader that he had read the stories, that they are tragic, and that we can learn something from them, and changes are coming. And I thought, oh, great. Well, the change that came was very, very small.
Yeah.
The next thing we did was a hunger strike. The action, we called it Hunger Strike and Spotlight. That I'm going to go on a hunger strike, but we encouraged everybody that was involved in the cause to start spotlighting, sharing what we're doing. So I was up in Salt Lake City for 23 days. I fasted for 23 days, only drank water. No food, and every night for about 4 hours, I spent across the street from Temple Square doing a live broadcast and meeting with survivors, victims, people that are concerned about parents that are concerned. And so it was a great event. But a week after returning home from that, I received a letter. Well, a letter was delivered to me, a summons to an excommunication tribunal.
Yep. And
a week and a half after that, I was formally excommunicated from the church. So that brings us up to Sarah's talk.
Well, let's take a couple steps back. The Salt Lake Tribune reported on a statement from the church that was issued in response to the hunger strike, which basically said, and not a quote, look, we care about children. We've made some changes, and we'll continue to look for ways to improve. But there's one paragraph I wanted to pull out, which said that your bishop, stake president, and a general authority had all, quote, met with him to express love, to listen, and to counsel with him. They have received and reviewed his materials and understand clearly his viewpoint. Further meetings with him are not necessary to clarify his position on this matter, end quote. But that doesn't speak at all to the months and months on end that you had spent reaching out to the church, to these leaders, trying to get some movement on the issue that eventually led all the way up to a hunger strike.
So let me just address that statement that you read about everybody meeting with me.
Yes.
So I met with my bishop. I wanted to find out what we are doing in our own congregation. What do his interviews consist of? Here is the loving thing that he said to me. So it said there that they met with me, they expressed their love and something else. But the loving thing was, Sam, I will only tell you what my interview protocols are as long as you promise not to tell anybody else.
Oh, for crying
as long
out
as you don't
loud.
write about it. It's got to be private. Only it doesn't go outside of this room.
That's the whole
So I was
problem.
sworn,
Off the record.
Yes.
Of course.
So I was sworn to silence on what we do to our kids in our own congregation. Now, is that the loving message they're talking about?
Wow.
Gosh.
Now let's talk about the stake president. So the stake president's a regional leader. He's my bishop's boss. So he would have about 10 congregations that he supervises. I had to push and push to get an appointment with the stake president. I finally got an appointment with him the day after I published a blog article where I called him unchristlike because he could care less about the welfare of our children. So I, out in the open, called this leader unchristlike. I got a call the next day
I bet you
from
did.
his secretary to set an appointment. So that's how I had to get an appointment with the stake president. I had to become his enemy and call him out. And so for 2.5 hours, and both my bishop and the stake president were in this meeting for 2.5 hours. I presented them now the march hasn't happened yet, but I published a book, printed a book, and gave the stories and gave that to him and the bishop, and talked about all the problems with our interviews, what it is causing, all the horrid results, horrid effects it's having on children into their adulthood, and many still suffering from things. And so they did let me air this for 2.5 hours, which I think was great. The response was, Sam, we are not going to make any changes. No changes are needed, and we're not going to make changes. And then he launched into his agenda for that meeting. My agenda was to, look, here's all these problems, we need to change things. His agenda then was to express his love in this way. Sam, if you don't shut up, we are going to excommunicate you from the church. Really, that is what he's talking about. That is the great love that was expressed to me. He literally said this, Sam, are you an apostate? And I said, no, I'm not an apostate. He said, Sam, you are an apostate. I said, I'm not an apostate. He said, Sam, you're an apostate, and let me read the definition of apostasy,
Oh, my God.
which is to openly oppose the church and its leaders. And I said, I'm not opposing the church or its leaders. I'm opposing one policy, not the doctrine, not the theology, not the church, not the leaders, a crappy policy that everybody else in the country has eliminated from their practice. He said, if you continue to speak up about this openly, we will have to take action to protect the good name of the church. I responded that I'm not interested in protecting the good name of the church. That's not my mission. The church is getting a bad name for what it is doing to its children. If we protect our children, the church's good name will be perfectly fine. But there's no way I am going to stop doing everything I can to protect our kids, and protecting children is more important to me than my membership in the church. That was last January. So there's my loving, wonderful meeting with my stake president. Sit down, shut up, or we're going to kick you out.
Wow.
Now, then it says I met with general authorities. I have never met with the general authority, ever. So that was the lie that they put right there.
Fancy.
That was a lie. So I never met with them. I had 2 phone calls with one general authority. And guess what he did? At the end of those calls, he said, Sam, I don't want you to let anybody know that you and I talked. I don't want you to let anybody know what the content of our conversation was. What the hell is this? Okay, so our church is so darn the opposite of transparency.
Yeah.
It's secret all over the place. They are afraid of their own shadows, as far as I'm concerned about. They're certainly afraid to come out in the open and speak. Now, I'm not going to reveal who this general authority is yet. I mean, I'm tempted to, since they lied about it in their press release.
Yeah.
But the first conversation was last January, and the purpose of me talking to him, I had been trying to warn everybody or give everybody a heads up. I'm going to have an interview with the local, with the Houston newspaper. And they're going to tell one side of the story, mine. Okay, what we're doing to the kids. Come be with me on this, okay? Let's, me and somebody else, do the interview with them.
Right.
And I couldn't get anybody's attention at that. I'd called public affairs. I'd called, I was still trying to get a hold of my stake president at that point in time. I'd not been able to and I'd not written a blog yet saying he was unchristlike. And so I called and left a message at church headquarters for somebody who had been a friend of mine for a long time that's a general authority. Now, so I told him what I was doing, that we've got an interview coming up in just a few days with the Chronicle, and I would like to talk to somebody in the church leadership to let's collaborate on this so the church doesn't look like they're super out of touch and they're a perverted organization as far as children go.
Yep.
Well, when I got him on the phone, he over and over said, we love our children, we love the children, of course we love the children. And Sam, nobody's asking these questions. I never asked those questions. You never asked those questions, right? Well, so he said he never asked them, that I never asked him, and my response would have been, well, that's right, we didn't ask him, but people are asking those questions. We didn't ask him. You didn't ask him. Yes, but some people are. We need to be eliminating this possibility. We need to be saying nobody can ask these kind of questions. So you didn't, I didn't. We need to make sure nobody does.
Yep.
That didn't go anywhere. The whole message was, well, I didn't, you didn't. Now, the next conversation I had with him was the day I started the fast. So this would be July 27th, public affairs, because I'd been open that I'm going to do something. He gave me a call. The public affairs had told him to give me a call to, and the whole purpose of his call was to get me to call off the hunger strike. And so we talked for an hour and a half, and over, he said how much we love the children. Yes, we want to protect the children. Well, good. Then you're really on my side. Take this cause up. You've got some authority there. You can go talk to the apostles. You talk to them all the time. Bring this up if you love the children and want to protect the children. Well, Sam, what can we do so that you would not go forward with this action? And he threw out several things. And the final thing was, so Sam, suppose you were to receive a letter from the apostles or an apostle that says they are working on this. Would you call off the hunger strike? And my response was, well, look, I am not going to be put off by some crummy letter that just says nothing, that we're working on it. That doesn't say anything. You should have been working on this for months. I put tons of money into this, tons of time. I've risked basically everything in my life for this, and you're now going to say we're working on it, and that means nothing. So anyway, his purpose was to get me to stop this thing, not to express this wonderful love.
Wow.
And you look at, they're saying, we understand where Sam's coming from. Really? So my local leader, he swore me to silence. My regional leader, it was, we're going to excommunicate you if you keep speaking about this. And I never met with anybody else to sit down and really have a thorough discussion about this. So I have no confidence at all that they believe where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Because we've never spoken personally. I have more confidence that Sarah has an understanding of where I'm coming from than them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because here we're talking.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It feels to me like the position is, hey, listen, we can't admit to this having happened.
Right.
Like, head in the sand, fingers in our ears, la 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 la. This doesn't happen in our church. I could spin doctor this for them, I think, pretty easily. The first presidency has had a revelation from God, and God has revealed that there are, evil people amongst us that
Right.
need to be, like there's got to be a way that you can spin that and keep it within the context of
Sure.
doctrine, but do something about it and come
Right.
clean and say, hey, look, yes, we've had a problem, and it's never, on my watch, never going to happen again.
Right. It's not hard to change policy.
And he would receive so much adulation
Oh, yeah.
Right?
for doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's crazy.
He would look good. He's
Yeah.
looking worse and
definitely.
worse
Yep.
as we go along, as we get more and more media. And now we're on Sarah's Talk. I mean, we've hit the top tier media right now.
Yeah, all 10 people.
Well, there was like 18 at one point. We peaked a little bit there.
So I'm curious if you're willing to share. At any point in all of this, have you found because it sounds like you're still pretty devout in belief. Have you found your own faith shaken? Did you question, like, well, why would God allow this kind of stuff to happen? Like, how has that process been in for you?
Well, I went through a faith transition about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was in the midst of my faith was greatly shaken.
Yeah.
And about 3 years ago, I finally came to a resolution of how I would move forward religiously. So I already felt like I had a faith transition, had landed on firm ground, and what I'm doing actually makes me feel a lot better about my faith today because I'm living it. And the place I landed was here. So we talk about faith, but to me, faith is no longer blind belief. In the scriptures, in both the Bible and the Book of Mormon, it talks about hope, and it talks about faith being hope with evidence. That faith is the evidence of things hoped for. Mm-hmm. So I finally pulled back and looked at, okay, things I believed before that I've been taught my entire life. The church is now disavowing those things. Well, geez, they taught it to me. Now they're telling me that they condemn those teachings. Okay, something's wrong here. Let me step back, and I embrace that concept, which all of us do in life anyway. In just general life, we put faith in things that we've got evidence, that we've got experience for. So if I don't have any evidence for it and I want it to be true, I'll hope for it. But I've got to have evidence to put faith in it. For example, am I going to meet Sarah after I die? Well, I don't know that. I don't know if there's any life after this. I don't have any evidence for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I can hope that there's a life after this, that I'll be with my family after this, but I don't have evidence that that's the case, so I can hope for it. But the faith part, I have 65 years of lived experience that is evidence to me that the teachings and example that are ascribed to Jesus Christ are a good and wonderful way for me to live my life. So I have landed on, okay, firm ground, teachings and example ascribed to Christ, teaching example of Jesus Christ, that I have evidence make me feel good and make other people feel good. It's just a good way to live my life. So when all this started up, I feel like those teachings and that example are giving me direction. And it's resulted in me being kicked out of the church. It's lost a lot of friends, having all kinds of issues. But ultimately, if you stand on the moral ground, if you stand on the right side of the issue, you feel good. And even if you're not happy with some things going on, there's a fulfillment, there's a joy, and eventually there's great happiness. Like, I now have a lot of friends, like my transgender friends that I love, my gay friends, all the friends that have been injured during these interviews. These are victims that I take great joy in the relationship that we have, the things that I've been able to help out with as far as healing, and what they've provided to me in friendship and understanding and patience. So anyway, there's my faith, is in the teachings and example of Jesus Christ.
Well, before we get off of that sort of topic of how you're kind of processing things now, and before we wrap up, so you mentioned you were officially excommunicated from the church, and in that edict they said, quote, can't even read this with a straight face, quote, "This action was not taken because of your opinion or position on protecting children," which is just bullshit. And as they also wrote, quote, "You are entitled to your opinion or position, but you cannot remain a good member in good standing while attacking the church and its leaders and trying to get others to follow you," which the Queen Sarah translation goes something like this. You're entitled to your opinion, but just shut the hell up, Sam.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Just shut up already. I watched a very emotional video of you reading this letter, and I was overwhelmed by the support that was there for you that day. This had all been essentially your life, Have you fully processed this excommunication yet? How are you feeling? It's still pretty fresh, right?
It's very fresh. So after I read that letter and found out I was excommunicated, that was Sunday. So I was there. I didn't get home until like 4 a.m. On Monday morning. And then Tuesday morning, I flew off I'd already had some time planned with my daughter and a business meeting in California. So and then you've got all the media. There was a ton of media requests that week. So I was really totally tied up. It was the excommunication. I did not have much time for my mind to really process it. But that started this week. And so there have been a lot of emotions that I have been surprised at. And some of them have been tough. But I'm sure I'll get through it. But there have been some tough emotions. For example, let's see. Not for example. I have decided to do certain things to confront things rather than feeling like, all my friends now think I'm evil, I'm invisible, I would be better. I mean, we teach in our churches, you're better off dead than being excommunicated.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of a teaching is that?
Wow.
That if you're an apostate and you're excommunicated, which I'm an apostate, that's the worst thing you can do in this life.
Yep.
It's worse than rape. If you're an apostate, you go to someplace that's even worse than hell.
Well, we have something in common then, because I'm a JW apostate.
You're an apostate?
Of Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah.
Okay. Well, you and I are going to, I don't know what they call it in Jehovah's Witness, but we call it outer darkness, which is you go to live with Cain and Satan, and it's darkness, and you never see your family or friends ever again. You certainly don't have anything to do with God again.
Yeah.
So, hey, well, now tell me your name again.
Becca.
Yeah. So, Becca, I need to remember that. Becca, I'll be looking for you or feeling around for Becca in outer darkness because there's no light there. But so we're chuckling about it, but
right?
but
it's so morbid and disturbing.
Yeah. So your friends, and not all friends. I'm hearing from some of my friends.
Yeah.
But you worry about they support this being done to me. I finally said, okay, I'm going to church tomorrow. Tomorrow's my first day that I'm in town to go to church. I'm going to go to church, and I'm going to shake everybody's hand. I'm going to smile at them. I'm not going to change my character because the church did something stupid. So yeah, there have been emotions that have been pretty up and down, but I think I'm going to do okay. I never suspected that I would have these emotions come up, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and for what it's worth, I think the work you're doing now with Protect LDS Children is far more important than probably anything that you
Right.
may have ever done in your entire life,
Yeah.
and I commend you for that. It's certainly,
you.
you know, for a non-believer, right? It's certainly more along the lines of what is preached to be Christ-like, to fight for the protection of
Right?
children,
Yeah.
than whatever it is the church is doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
so what are the goals going forward? What's next for Protect LDS Children?
You're going to get the same answer I give everybody when they ask that question all the way along. I don't know what the hell's next. I know I've got an interview tomorrow. I've got an interview next Tuesday. I'm working with some other, not as quite as top tier as Sarah's Talk,
Oh,
but they're
gosh.
top tier media organizations, and I'm hoping we're going to have some additional great media. There was a CNN article that came out. Oh my goodness, it was so good, and just really did a lot of good for the movement, generated a lot of awareness. So I'll be looking. I've got some things in my head, but they're not quite cemented yet on where we'd go next. But no, I'm not stopping at this, period. The kids are still there. The kids are still being harmed.
Yep.
There are still tons of victims that will be blessed by seeing that somebody is stepping up to say what happened to them was wrong. It's a healing thing for victims to recognize there are people that are now standing up and speaking up for them.
And meanwhile, you're still curating stories on protectldschildren.org, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so, and the petition, is that still live as well, that people can still go sign the petition?
Absolutely. We get signatures every day.
Great.
We have not promoted that for months, but we get signatures on it every day.
So beyond those things, if our listeners want to get involved, what can they help? What's best? What kind of help do you need? What can we do to help spread this message and fight for change?
Okay, you know what? You're going to be the first person I tell, since there's only 14 people on here right now.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking about. But first of all, ways that people can help: go to protectldschildren.org and click sign the petition. Sign the petition. That petition will still is still a tool that we're using to move the cause forward. So protectldschildren.org, go there, click on sign the petition. 2, go to Facebook. Protect LDS Children Facebook page. Like that page. Just liking that page, that does some good for us. And then share things that are on that page. The biggest thing that we can have people help out with is the awareness. Every time somebody posts something from that page, shares something from that page, it increases the awareness. It might be one person that reads it. It might be 100 people that read that. Share it in the groups that you're in. I know there are some groups that have 100,000 people in the group. Geez, what would happen if you shared something from Protect LDS Children in a group like that? If you're not a member of a group like that, and just share it on your page, and one person sees it and understands that I'm not a Mormon, but at this stage I wouldn't want to join the Mormon Church with my kids until they change this dangerous policy. Now, so here's what, and so I don't have any action on this, but I'm just going to let you know what I'm thinking about.
Okay. Got the scoop.
Yeah.
The definition of sexual abuse in many places is not just physical touching of a child, but it also includes taking a child behind closed doors and talking to them about sexual things, explicit sexual things. Well, now, if that is already a definition of sexual abuse, then what I'm looking at doing is taking it locally, forming a petition that we need to either have some kind of law put in place that already it's a definition of sexual abuse, but it may not be in our laws.
Right.
We want to protect all children. We've got this Catholic thing going on. Well, you know what? We need a law that will, because when this abuse happens in any church, it affects all of society. It doesn't affect that kid in that church. That kid's a member of our society. And in our church, most kids that are shamed like this, they leave the church and have to, many of them start making horrid decisions. You hate yourself. Well, you know what? You start to medicate by doing alcohol, making bad decisions about drugs, starting to get promiscuous, marry somebody, the first person that comes along, and he's an abuser. And then you've got family problems. Kids come into the world, you get a divorce, they've got problems. Therapy going, they're not as functional in society when they hate themselves. So it affects us all. So I'm looking at starting up a petition, starting it here locally. Maybe it'll be a Texas thing. Maybe it would be a Houston thing. If we were able to, and I've talked to several people, every person I've said, yeah, I'd sign a petition to stop that kind of stuff. So if we gathered 10,000 signatures, would the mayor of Houston pay attention to that? Would the Austin pay attention to that? If we had 100,000 signatures, I don't know how many signatures we could get, but I believe that's where I'm looking at, is taking it to the public square. And even if we can't get a law passed, we were not successful in getting the church to change its policy, but we got a ton of awareness, a ton of press. Does this get a ton of press if we can take 100,000 signatures to Austin, if we can march to Austin like we did in Salt Lake City? That's what I'm looking at, is taking this to the public arena for all of society to realize this is hurting. This is it hurts people, hurts kids, and it costs our society in many ways.
Absolutely.
So I'll be doing a petition soon.
Good. Yeah, let's yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up here, I want to give you the last word. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure that we get out there? I think we did a pretty good job of hitting all the topics. Yeah. Yeah,
I think so too. I want to say that the vast majority of the bishops in the church, I mean, it's a volunteer position. It's an unpaid position. You're asked to do it. Usually run about 5 years. It takes a huge amount of time. Most of them are good men. They're not doing things to hurt kids. Some are, but most are not. But they don't understand how they hurt the kids when they're probing with these sexually explicit questions. So I do want to say that the bishops are good men. They just need to quit doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, we'll put a link, of course, to protectldschildren.org and the Facebook group and such in our show notes of this episode so that folks can learn more. Dear listener, just a word of caution. There are some very real and very powerful stories that have been curated at protectldschildren.org, and many of which almost require an advisory. So just kind of know going in that that's, this is what you're getting into, and be in a good headspace for that kind of material. But I promise you that every single one of those stories, as they did the ones that I read for me, they will inspire you to get involved in this movement. Sam, thanks again for coming on the show tonight. I appreciate it so much.
Can I ask one more question?
Please do.
Sarah, how did you become aware of this?
Oh, Lord. I don't know. I think I just saw it online. I mean, McKenna talked to us about it again last week, but...
Okay, McKenna. Good for her.
But yeah, she did mention it in her interview as well. And I want to say that maybe the guys from the How To Heretic may have mentioned you as well.
Yeah.
But no, I've heard your name floated around for a while. You've been on my whiteboard for a while, Sam. So I appreciate it.
Well, super. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And hey, let's keep in touch as you move forward here, as you come up with, new events or milestones or ideas and just want to chat, whatever, we would be thrilled to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, I really enjoyed this, and great people, and you all have a great night.
All right. Thank you. You too, Sam. We'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Good times. So here's what we're going to do. I do have some stories to talk about
Stories.
tonight, some news stories. The big one is going to be Brett Kavanaugh. So we're going to have to chat about that. I didn't think I was going to have a Florida man tonight. And then you sent me the second article that in the first.
I didn't read it. I read the headline and I went, send to Sarah.
I don't want to give it away. So let's do this. Let's just take a break. I need to put some ice in my drink.
Yeah, I need to use the facilities.
Yep, I need to do that as well.
So we're going to take a break.
In a minute.
Russell said he needs a drink count.
Yeah, what's going on in the chat? I haven't been paying as close attention.
Russell says, Dan, I'm behind. I've only had one drink so far. Been busy. I need a drink count. Dan says, Sarah's finishing her second. Becca has not finished her first.
Oh, I'm on my second.
And I can't read the rest of Dan's comment.
And we've had some new folks in the chat tonight.
Yeah,
Sherry and Will.
Some new people in there.
Joanna, Ash. That's great, Tim. Good to see some new faces, and so thanks for tuning in.
Stay with us.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Sarah Talk.
I was feeling so alone.
I was going through a really difficult time.
I was embarrassed and a little scared.
I didn't want to bother anyone.
I didn't think they'd understand.
I thought it would just make things worse.
It was tough at first, but I did it.
It ended up taking a huge weight off my shoulders.
I feel a lot better.
I'm glad I asked for help.
I asked for help.
I asked for help.
I asked my aunt.
I asked my dad.
I asked my teacher.
I asked my mom.
I asked the Trevor Project.
Now, I feel like I can get through this.
I know that I am brave.
You can do this.
You can do this.
Ask for help.
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 Whatever it is, ask for help.
If you're thinking about suicide or need support, call the Trevor Lifeline at 1-866-488-7386. Trained counselors are there to help 24/7. Ask for help.
Are you ready for your first card? As I look at the set I placed down for you, I see an interesting things rising. Some of it has to deal with love and money and changes, and hopefully they're going to be for the better. Now your first card represents your situation, maybe some problems you've been having, maybe a little bit about yourself. Your first card is sorrow. This card is letting us know that there is some type of disruption in your life. Not that it's a big deal, but this card is giving off a strange vibe of anxiety. Actually, this card is warm in my hand. Oh, now caller, if you listen here, I'm seeing in the cards. Oh, yes, the 45 of mangoes. The 45 of mangoes card says you're going to go on to Patreon and subscribe because there is nothing better than giving when receiving. What will you ask me? Find out now and I see for you. Call me now for a free tarot reading.
Hello, my friends. This is Sister Mary Atheist of the Church of Religious Avoidance down here in Bumblefuck, Alabama. Now, my friends, my people, my brothers and sisters, do you feel lost? Do you feel that swelling urge to be a part of something better? Well, let the word of SarahTalk help you. If you've never known the word SarahTalk, learn it, live it, love it. Can I get an amen? No? Good, 'cause we don't do that shit round here. My friends, we must all remember that the good word of SarahTalk doesn't happen for free. So get yourself over to patreon.com/SarahTalk and help us spread the word. Plant that seed and help it grow into secular, peer-reviewed empirical evidence for the good of all. In the name of the Sarah, the Becca, and the science-based podcast, amen, hallelujah, and holy shit.
Hey everyone, this is Dan Hogan from Mesa, Arizona, and thanks for listening to SarahTalk podcast. You know, you're privileged to listen to the show. Not everyone gets to listen. I mean, the dead are not allowed to listen. They don't know what they're missing. Do you know why? Because they're dead. But if you're alive and listening, thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show.
I need to know if there are podcasts in the afterlife. According to Dan, no. Thanks again to Sam Young with Protect LDS Children. That was fantastic.
Yes, it was.
What a great conversation. And I have a lot of stuff like that on my whiteboard that I'm chipping away little bits at a time.
Mm-hmm.
CJ says, thank you for interviewing Sam. Great job. Thank you, CJ. What else is going on?
Russell's catching up
Russell's
on the drinking
catching
game.
up on the drinking game. Very good.
He also says Sarah's radio background really shows in her interviewing skills.
I appreciate that because sometimes I feel like I'm a little more scripted than I'd like to be. That's all I'll say about that. Now, so before we move on, I was going to bring this story up while we were talking to Sam, but I decided to put a pin in it because I didn't want to dilute what Protect LDS Children and Sam are working for, which, and I've heard him talk about this in other interviews, and we didn't really get into the weeds on it tonight, but is that, like, his goal is to protect the children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, out of that also comes the church looks better.
Right.
And lawsuits are staved off.
Right.
So the church saves money.
Right.
Right. So there are some side effects that are positives for the church.
Right.
So this story, the Jehovah's Witnesses were ordered by a jury to pay $35 million to an abuse survivor. And again, last week we talked with McKenna Denson about her sex crime cover-up by the church formerly known as Mormon. And when we talked to her, I said then that these religious institutions need some real consequence. And whether that's hung up in the courts, monetary, empty the pews, right? Whatever those consequences are, if change is to happen, that needs to be part of it. Now, here's a good example. This case involved two women who are now 32 and 21 who alleged that a family member, who's also a congregation member, sexually abused them, and a third family member in the 90s and 2000s. They say they reported the abuse to elders who handled the matter internally, as the garbage cults do, after consulting with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. The Watchtower told Montana church leadership not to report her abuse to police.
Mm-hmm. That's common.
Which, again, this is why there should be no religious exemptions in the mandatory reporting laws.
Right. Exactly.
And though, again, the Catholics, even where there aren't exemptions, they still didn't follow the law. So
well, yeah, and
what are you going to do?
There have been cases where the witnesses have been in that situation too.
Mm-hmm. During trial, they argued that Montana has the clergy loophole, which exempts them from mandatory reporting laws. The lawsuit states that elders disfellowshipped the abuser in 2004, but reinstated him the next year, and the abuse of the now 21-year-old victim continued after being reinstated. You didn't see that coming.
Of course not.
Now, the $35 million judgment still has to be reviewed by a judge and could be reduced, right? This was a jury's decision suggestion. Montana law caps punitive damages at 3% of a company's net worth or $10 million, whichever is less, though that law is currently pending a challenge at the Montana Supreme Court. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Okay. I also want to mention, we did get a voicemail from a listener, and
Yes,
and I'm sorry that I haven't addressed it yet because I'm working on something for a future episode. So hang tight.
Wow, that was vague.
Well, I'm going to give you more.
I'm kidding.
Shut up. The question was about being transgender and fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So the listener said that they are currently on progesterone and had to drop the estrogen because it makes you sterile. And the questions were, does progesterone make you sterile too? And also how to increase ejaculation. So first, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on a TV or a podcast. And I have reached out to a fertility specialist who has specific experience with transgender people because I think it would make a great show topic for one, but also because that's the best person to really answer these questions. Now, all of that said, I will tell you about my own personal experiences and some of the research that I've found on my own with the following disclaimer. Don't take medical advice from a podcast. Okay, so first, we had our kids before I transitioned, right? So this was not really a concern for us at all. Like, it's not something that I had to think about.
Right.
In fact, knowing that would be a likely outcome, when I came home and said, after the therapist appointment, and said, okay, this is who I am, this is what I have to do, and I'm ready. Becca said,
you better knock me up first.
Becca said, okay. That's not what you said.
I know.
You said something to the effect of,
I like this version better.
I like my version better. And
All
my
right,
version
fine.
better was, Becca said, I love you and I support you, and if this is what you need to do, I'm behind you 100%, but I want another baby first. And I said, okay, that's fair. Sure. I mean, what? That doesn't take a lot of time to make happen.
It didn't. I was surprised how little time it took.
So anyway, fertility, not a thing that we really thought about.
No, didn't need to.
I am currently on...
Because I deal in ultimatums.
Mm-hmm. I am on spironolactone, estradiol, and progesterone. Right? And spironolactone is the testosterone blocker, suppressor. Estradiol is the estrogen, progesterone. So the research that I found, and I'm at maintenance levels now.
Yeah.
We're coming up on a transiversary.
I know.
My HRT anniversary is coming up in a couple weeks.
Believe it.
So anyway, I'm at kind of maintenance levels now. Now the research that I found says that both estrogen and the anti-androgens, so testosterone inhibitors like Spiro, affect sperm production. And while the longer-term effects are not entirely understood, there hasn't been a shit ton of study done, but the ability for sperm, the ability for the body to make sperm may or may not come back if you stop treatments. And a lot of that has to do with, or may depend on how long you've been on the medications, at what dosages, you know, your natural body's fertility, and that sort of thing. So that's the hormone related piece of it, right? So there is a small, I guess, possibility that you can stop all treatments and regain enough to be fertile enough to store or have a child again. And they do recommend that if you are going to transition and you know you want children, to head to a sperm bank.
Yeah.
Right.
Make a donation.
Just save,
Put it off
freeze
to the side.
some sperm for later.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this is kind of unknown.
Well, yeah, and you don't know what the chemical does to your production of sperm afterwards.
Right.
And if anything would be viable afterwards.
Yep.
You just never know.
So I am in contact with a fertility specialist. So we're working out the details on trying to get an interview lined up, and I think that'll be a great topic.
Yeah.
On the other topic of that question, which was about ejaculate. So I have found in my near 3 years, it didn't take long before I quit producing ejaculate. Like very little, if any, and it's this is should have put a content warning on this. It's very it's clear and almost watery. I think that's enough detail.
More than enough.
But again, the idea is all of these, all of the drugs that I'm taking are suppressing the normal male processes in the body, so that the body can feminize, right? So you crank the testosterone way down. And they were surprised at my last appointment or how low my testosterone levels were.
I wasn't. I mean, I'm not.
So
I'm kidding.
Anyway,
I'm a bitch.
It's all right. I still love you.
I've seen her try to open pickle jars lately. It's hilarious.
Oh, it's so hard. I'm so weak. I mean, there you go. There's another decrease in muscle mass. And anyway, so that's that's to be expected, right? Your frequency of erections decreases greatly. Just everything changes in the way that your body functions down there when you really get on a run of these hormones. So I guess my question would be, and this may be where it comes down to, all right, how long have you been on all of these medications and which ones and at what dosages? And right, so the doctor is still the best person to answer the question, but I've talked way more than I had intended to talk about this, just to know that I am working on a future show.
Yes.
To really get into that. Okay. There have been some interesting things happening in current political campaign wars. We talked about Florida Republican gubernatorial candidate Ron DeSantis' ad, you'll recall, where he's reading to his baby from Trump's book and demonstrating how to build a wall with toy blocks.
Yeah. And
Well,
apparently I wasn't the only one who thought that was a parody.
Here's another good one.
Oh, God, there's more? Same guy?
Republican Representative Paul Gosar, running for re-election in Arizona's 4th District, had an interesting turn of events when 6 of his 9 siblings, Grace, David, Jennifer, Tim, Joan, and Gaston, who names the kid Gaston? Put out their own TV ad about their brother.
Paul Gosar, the congressman, isn't doing anything to help rural America.
Paul's absolutely not working for his district.
If they care about health care, they care about their children's health care, they would hold him to account. If they care about jobs, they would hold him to account.
If he actually cared about people in rural Arizona, I bet he'd be fighting for Social Security, for better access to health care. I bet he would be researching what is the most insightful water policy to help the environment of Arizona sustain itself and be successful.
And he's not listening to you, and he doesn't have your interests at heart. My name is Tim Gosar.
David Gosar.
Grace Gosar.
Joan Gosar.
Gaston Gosar.
Jennifer Gosar.
Paul Gosar is my brother.
My brother.
And I endorse Dr. Brill.
Dr. Brill wholeheartedly endorse Dr. David Brill for Congress.
I'm Dr. David Brill, and I approve this message.
I bet you do.
I bet you do. Dan, that's out in Arizona.
going
What do
on
you
out
have
there,
to say
buddy?
about that? That's some crazy. Oh,
Why are we still playing?
I don't know.
Gosar told CNN that his siblings are, quote, liberal Democrats who hate President Trump.
Well, you know, don't we all?
And he slammed Democratic challenger David Brill for such a shameful attack.
Now, I haven't done any research because I didn't realize we were going to talk about this on the show.
Okay.
But this actually came up. I was working at the school
really?
doing files for one of the classrooms, and I was working with another mom, and it was just the two of us. And we started talking about this, and she said that none of the siblings even live in that district. And so I don't know. I don't know where she leans on this side of it. But it was just her thing. And so I was like, oh man, that would be interesting. So yeah, do a quick Google search on the siblings.
No, I'm gonna turn the voice. I'm gonna turn our phone on.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good idea.
Sorry, I'm reading the chat.
Oh, yeah. Don't call yet. We haven't turned the phone on.
Now he said that, quote, these disgruntled Hillary supporters are related by blood to me, but like leftists everywhere, they put political ideology before family. Lenin, Mao, and Kim Jong-un would be proud. It is unfortunate that my opponent chose to use family political differences to launch attacks on me rather than focusing on the issues.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's going to be some awkward Thanksgiving conversation. Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yep. So, Dan, what's going on out there?
All right. He commented, but I can't see the... Okay. I'm going to bitch about this Facebook chat every time.
Please stop.
But
Dan says that race is irrelevant when it comes to Arizona. The Sinema McSally race is the center of interest. They're replacing Jeff Flake. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
We're definitely watching that one for sure.
Poor Jeff Flake.
But
He's
this
got a
was
couple of
just.
days.
This was just. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. This was just a great ad. I just thought it was wonderful. Okay, tonight we're introducing a new segment that we call.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. These allegations are false.
Our new segment is, I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Oh, my God.
Of course.
No, but you tried.
Of course, we are still following the confirmation process for Supreme Court nominee and alleged sexual offender Brett Kavanaugh.
Flippin' hell.
Potentially, a.k.a. Bart O. Kavanaugh.
Bart O. Kavanaugh.
A name from Mark Judge's 1997 book, Wasted. Mark Judge, Kavanaugh's old school buddy, depicts Bart as a blackout drunk. I will open the lines and take some calls here, but I've got this is a bit of a speech.
Got it.
Just to catch you all up.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats dropped the hint that a sexual assault allegation had been made by an anonymous person who has since gone public, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who says she was pushed inside a bedroom at a high school party in 1982, where she says a drunken Kavanaugh pinned her to a bed and tried to strip her while a similarly drunken judge watched and laughed. In an odd bit of timing, faster than Donald Trump could get to the toilet to tweet, Chuck Grassley produces a letter from 65 women who said they knew Kavanaugh in high school, testifying to his good character. A second woman came forward, Deborah Ramirez, who claims Kavanaugh exposed himself to her at a Yale College party. Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, said on Monday that he has multiple clients and at least one was prepared to come forward publicly, and we now know that that accuser is Julie Swetnick, who said that Kavanaugh and Judge were present at a party where she was drugged and gang raped. She did not identify either of the men as being involved in that incident. Ford testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday, giving a heartfelt opening statement. And I don't know about you, but there's no way that was any kind of act.
No. Oh, absolutely not.
You know what? Let's listen to it. It's short.
I am here today not because I want to be. I am terrified. I am here because I believe it is my civic duty to tell you what happened to me while Brett Kavanaugh and I were in high school. I was pushed onto the bed and Brett got on top of me. He began running his hands over my body and grinding into me. I yelled, hoping that someone downstairs might hear me, and I tried to get away from him, but his weight was heavy. Brett groped me and tried to take off my clothes. He had a hard time because he was very inebriated and because I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit underneath my clothing. I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling. This is what terrified me the most and has had the most lasting impact on my life. It was hard for me to breathe, and I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me. Both Brett and Mark were drunkenly laughing during the attack. They seemed to be having a very good time. Mark seemed ambivalent, at times urging Brett on, and at times telling him to stop. A couple of times I made eye contact with Mark and thought he might try to help me, but he did not. During this assault, Mark came over and jumped on the bed twice while Brett was on top of me. And the last time that he did this, we toppled over and Brett was no longer on top of me. I was able to get up and run out of the room. Directly across from the bedroom was a small bathroom. I ran inside the bathroom and locked the door. I waited until I heard Brett and Mark leave the bedroom, laughing, and loudly walk down the narrow stairway, pinballing off the walls on the way down. I waited, and when I did not hear them come back up the stairs, I left the bathroom, went down the same stairwell, through the living room, and left the house. I remember being on the street and feeling an enormous sense of relief that I had escaped that house and that Brett and Mark were not coming outside after me. Brett's assault on me drastically altered my life.
That whole testimony hearing was just weird all the way around. With Republicans engaging sex crimes prosecutor Rachel Mitchell to ask the hard questions. In an opinion post in the USA Today, 30-year prosecutor and lawyer Harry Littman wrote, quote, "The Republican senator's strategy of cowering in the background while leaving the questioning to sex crimes prosecutor Rachel Mitchell backfired sharply. Mitchell, understandably, applied a kid gloves approach while clearly trying to chip away at Ford's version of the event. But it was evident that, far from a friendly or nonpartisan inquisitor, she was a hired hand for the silent Republican majority and was trying to catch Ford in a minor inconsistency," end quote. Now, that played out as getting dragged down into these statements about Ford's fear of flying and who paid for the polygraph test. As if any of that had anything to do with it. Democrats repeated throughout the proceedings that this wasn't an investigation, but a job interview. They called for the FBI to investigate and really take this seriously. Chuck Grassley played the annoyed, grumpy old white man that he is, and Lindsey Graham had an explosive outburst at one point that we'll listen to in a minute. And again, I think I don't know if we've mentioned this on air yet or not, but this could have electoral implications.
Mm-hmm.
If Kavanaugh gets confirmed, Democrats will be incensed and flood the polls. If, however, Kavanaugh is not confirmed, Republicans will be incensed. So that... Anyway, so then after running her through the ringer, Kavanaugh gave his own statement, which lasted nearly 45 minutes, so we're not going to listen to it, and can only be described as the whinging of a petulant, spoiled little rich kid as he angrily attacked Democrats for tarnishing his good name and as some kind of Hillary Clinton payback scheme. Before
so absurd.
Before switching to crying in his beer,
Right.
which, by the way, he really likes.
Yeah.
Don't know if you picked up on that or not, but Brett Kavanaugh, he really likes beer. This angry white man losing privilege demeanor is thought to have been a change in tone prompted by Trump, who thought Kavanaugh was too soft in his interview with Fox News just a few days before. Now, we were going to listen to that and watch the Fox News interview, but so much has changed since then that it's fucking irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
But he was. It was very, soft and put on a good face,
Right.
and Trump didn't like that apparently.
Well.
And I was gonna go through this whole thing, and so they talked to Ford, and then in the afternoon they talked to Kavanaugh, and that was very interesting. And I was gonna go through that and pull some clips out, but instead I decided to pick just one. This is Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina.
Oh God, this one really?
During his turn to address Kavanaugh.
All right.
and he lost his fucking mind.
Are you aware that at 9:23 on the night of July the 9th, the day you were nominated to the Supreme Court by President Trump, Senator Schumer said, 23 minutes after your nomination, I will oppose Judge Kavanaugh's nomination with everything I have. I have a bipartisan, and I hope a bipartisan majority will do the same. The stakes are simply too high for anything less. Well, if you weren't aware of it, you are now. Did you meet with Senator Dianne Feinstein on August 20th?
I did meet with Senator Feinstein.
Did you know that her staff had already recommended a lawyer to Dr. Ford?
I did not know that.
Did you know that her and her staff had this allegations for over 20 days?
I did not know that at the time.
If you wanted an FBI investigation, you could have come to us. What you want to do is destroy this guy's life, hold this seat open, and hope you win in 2020. You've said that, not me. You've got nothing to apologize for. When you see Sotomayor and Kagan, tell them that Lindsay said hello, because I voted for them. I would never do to them what you've done to this guy. This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham, that you knew about it and you held it. You had no intention of protecting Dr. Ford. None. She's as much of a victim as you are. God, I hate to say it, because these have been my friends. But let me tell you, when it comes to this, you're looking for a fair process. You came to the wrong town at the wrong time, my friend. Do you consider this a job interview?
The advice and consent role is like a job
You
interview.
consider that you've been through a job interview.
I've been through a process of advice and consent under the Constitution, which
Would you say you've been through hell?
I've been through
Objection.
Hell and then some.
This is not a job interview.
Yeah.
This is hell. This is going to destroy.
You won't even let him talk.
Destroy the ability of good people to come forward because of this crap. Your high school yearbook. You have interacted with professional women all your life, not one accusation. You're supposed to be Bill Cosby when you're a junior and senior in high school. And all of a sudden you got over it. It's been my understanding that if you drug women and rape them for 2 years in high school, you probably don't stop. Here's my
and there's a whole other investigation
Right,
that
where,
needs to happen.
where would you have gotten that understanding, Sarah?
understanding. If you lived a good life, people would recognize it, like the American Bar Association has the gold standard.
Let's wait for that.
His integrity is absolutely unquestioned. He is the very circumspect in his personal conduct, harbors no biases or prejudices. He's entirely ethical, is a really decent person. He is warm, friendly, unassuming. He's the nicest person.
The bar revoked their support for Kavanaugh.
Didn't they?
The ABA. The one thing I can tell you, you should be proud of. Ashley, you should be proud of this. That you raised a daughter who had the good character to pray for Dr. Ford. To my Republican colleagues, if you vote no, you're legitimizing the most despicable thing I have seen in my time in politics. You want this seat? I hope you never get it. I hope you're on the Supreme Court. That's exactly where you should be. And I hope that the American people will see through this charade. And I wish you well, and I intend to vote for you, and I hope everybody who's fair-minded will.
What a grumpy fucker.
Right? He obviously needs to get laid.
All right, so as of yesterday, Kavanaugh has been approved out of the Justice Committee now. But while on the road to a full Senate vote, Arizona Senator Republican Jeff Flake shocked his colleagues on both sides of the aisle with a call for a delay on the full Senate vote until an FBI investigation had been completed. Trump then instructed the FBI to open an investigation, but it maintained a very limited scope.
Yeah. Well, that's what he
Um,
asked for.
Sure, right.
Flake did.
Let's see if we can get
did
see if
you-
we can get Victoria on the line
Yeah.
while you soliloquize here.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Well, he went, it was like an hour, I think, he spent in the side room before the vote was supposed to go down, talking to his, what was it? Coons, his Democrat friend, getting advice on how to, what would they agree would be a reasonable, compromise, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Then he came back.
And again, the Jeff Flake thing, like, really keep in mind, he is not
He's right. He's
running for, he's
right.
not up for re-election, so
But did you see the footage of the girls in the elevator?
no.
Okay, because his office announced that he was going to vote yes and support Kavanaugh. And then, like, right after that announcement, he got into an elevator that was a senator's only elevator to go up to the floor or wherever.
Okay.
And the CNN reporter, I guess, stopped to ask a question. And then two girls took that opportunity to hold the elevator open. And the one yelled at him about they were at his office telling their story about their own
I did hear about that. Yeah.
So, and the second girl was like, "Look at my face when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that so, and then you could tell there was footage of him. Oh, is she on the phone? Oh.
Yeah, we have Victoria on the line.
You're like,
Victoria!
Yes, hello.
Gosh, what do you think of all this nonsense?
Well, no, a lot. But the biggest one that I think has really got to be spoken about, the fact that the Republicans brought in a special prosecutor when it comes to sex crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And they succeeded all their time
Yes.
to giving them time to ask questions of Dr. Blasey Ford. But as soon as it came time to ask questions of Judge Kavanaugh, suddenly they stopped that.
Yep.
And it was all just, oh, you're the victim. How horrible is it the way you're being treated?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, there's no due
Right.
process there.
Exactly. Fair and equal is not the way that I can describe this.
Yeah. It was so strange. Just even the 5 minutes back and forth thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really odd too. Like,
It was just awkward and
Well, right, especially since during the initial confirmation hearing, it was like, you get 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. But during this particular proceeding, you only get 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And during that, like I said, the Republicans, 5 minutes of a sexual assault prosecutor going against the victim of the accused, or the victim of the situation, and then once it gets to the person who is supposedly the accused, they stop that. And instead of letting the prosecutor question him, they start defending him.
Yep.
Well, and then anytime the Democrats would try to ask a question, he would either refuse to answer it or ask questions of them. Like there was one senator asked if he'd ever been blackout drunk or a question like that, and he was like, "Well, have you?" Like,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what
I
the
remember
what?
that, and he had to come back and apologize.
To
saying
her.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, oh my God. Cannot even put that into words for how horrible that was. Yeah, it was so blatant. And, okay, now let's throw in one other thing. For somebody to be nonpartisan, to be neutral on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And then he starts out with his opening statement saying that the Democrats have done this and it's the Clintons and it's an attack on this side. He is clearly partisan and biased.
Yep. That alone should have been disqualifying as far as I'm concerned.
Amen to that, which I know, amen. Hey, I'm Sister Mary Atheist, and we shouldn't have any kind of partisan bias on any side.
So
that's just...
Here's another question that I wanted to kind of get into. So,
all right.
So you have most of the people on my timeline that were, I believe Dr. Ford. And then they would have people commenting that would say, well, so guilty until proven innocent now? Is that how this works? And again, you have to remind them that we're not in court. This isn't a trial. This isn't a criminal investigation either. It's a job interview.
And so many people have pointed out that if he had just said, yeah, I probably drank a little bit too much and maybe this could have happened, I don't remember, and been honest about it, like the whole thing is that he's just trying to lie about it.
Mm-hmm.
If he had just been honest about it, then we would have been in a completely different conversation right now.
Right. Well, that's the biggest thing is just his credibility is completely shot because, first of all, there's already proven evidence that in his last confirmation hearing, he has been proven that he lied.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which he should be impeached for already.
Yep.
Now he's on this one, targeted for sexual assault allegations. Oh my God.
So there's another thing that people are all, worked up about, which is this happened, 30 whatever years ago, right? This was a long time ago.
36 years.
So the question becomes, at what point do the skeletons in your closet from your past stop following you, right? Is it...
Well, from my perspective, never. I'm sorry, but...
And it depends on the offense.
Past,
sure, yeah, right. And that's the thing, as they've stated, a lot of people have done some stupid shit when they were younger. Right.
Well,
now
been there, done that myself. So,
right.
Okay, I can get that.
Especially,
we may not have raped people.
Frat
we may
boys
not have
in college at,
Right. But as someone who believes in rehabilitation, where I do not believe in the death penalty, and I do not believe in the punitive system that we have here in America, where I think we should be rehabilitating people. And so at some point, we have to be able to look at an abuser or a criminal of any kind and be able to determine, okay, you've crossed the threshold. You can be considered a good guy again. And I don't know if it's, what we do now is you serve time and then we give you your shit and tell you to have a good life.
Right.
Is it, how would this have played out differently had he said, listen, to your point, listen, I did some shit when I was in high school and college, and yes, I had a drinking problem, and there are things I don't remember.
Right.
It may have been me, it may not have been me, I don't know, but look, if it was, please know that I am extremely apologetic and sorry, and I can't believe that I would do a thing like that, and I want to make it right. Had that come up, then what?
Okay, well then let me ask you this. What exactly has he done to make it right, or to even say, there's even a chance that, okay, maybe I got a little drunk and I did something that I'm sorry for. Has he ever gone out of his way to say, okay, maybe I did something back in the day that I'm sorry for? And you add on to that the whole inconsistency of his storyline of, I don't drink. I didn't drink back then. Okay, yes, well, I did drink back then. Yes, okay, I drank back then, and sometimes I had too many.
Yep.
It's the inconsistency of it. I'm sorry, but his story has absolutely zero credibility behind it.
Well, that's
Whereas
because he's
hers-
not being honest.
Right.
Like that's
Yes.
the whole. That's
Yes,
not. That was
yes,
my whole
yes,
point.
Yes, 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 yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
Right. Because if he had just been honest from the beginning, then we would
Right.
be having a completely different conversation. And that was
Right.
that was my point. Like, okay, so maybe he hasn't done anything. Like, I mean, there's the latest allegations, or the as far as time is concerned, we're what 1998.
Right. And even if maybe,
But-
like he said, he and his friends, went out and drank and had a few too many and did stupid shit.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we all did that back in the day.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I never pinned a girl down to a bed and tried to fucking rape her.
Right.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm right there with you. Like that's it depends on the offense.
Right.
Attempted rape
Yeah.
is a punishable crime by law.
Yeah.
And I
Exactly.
don't believe
And-
there's a statute of limitations
Not in this case.
in this case.
Yeah.
So if
Right.
if she
Statute-
wanted
well-
to pursue criminal charges against him, she could, and I don't know that that's not going to happen. But that's her, like I don't think that
Well, even
anybody can
that-
go after him unless she wants to.
Even at that, there are so many women out there that have been assaulted in such a way that haven't come forward because there are so many reasons, like
Yep.
they won't believe me,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll think that, well, the way I was dressed, or the way I was acting, or the fact that I had a few drinks
Mm-hmm.
makes them think that I was asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it is so fucking horrible that is the way society is treating women. And quite frankly, this is bringing up a whole new topic of the fact that, I'm sorry, but women are being abused, and there needs to be, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble finding the words for this, because there needs to be a way for women to actually be able to report these things and being taken seriously.
Yep.
And not be victimized further. Because for every
Yes.
victim that comes forward and isn't believed or is blamed, it just makes their experience that much worse.
Oh, yeah. We saw an example of that in the Senate the other day when they started yelling at her, or not yelling at her, but yelling at the situation, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Judge Kavanaugh, for you being victimized."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look
Really?
what your family has been through. I
Right.
can't imagine
Oh,
how
yeah. I
you.
damn near threw up.
Oh.
Oh, my. Oh,
I
it was
can't.
so horrible.
Look, I'm sure that his family has been through a lot, but
Yes.
even if you wanted to make that statement, right? Here's how I might do it a little more, call it politically correct, right? Listen, I'm sure that what Dr. Ford is saying is true in a way, that something happened to her, that
Right.
this tragedy happened to her at in some way, at some time, at some place, by someone. I'm not
Yes.
convinced that it was Judge Kavanaugh. She may have misremembered the details, but I understand that she is hurting, and that she, this is real for her.
Something
and that,
happened
that it
to
has,
her.
yeah, that
Right.
something happened
Oh,
to
yes.
her, and that this has really affected her life. Now, that said, I also think that it's bullshit for the Democrats to pull this 11th hour thing, dropping this stuff on us, and dragging you through the mud,
Right.
good sir. I think there's a way to say both of those things if that's your position, which is not my position.
You know what was very telling for me was when Kamala Harris point blank asked him,
I love that woman.
"Did you
Yeah,
watch?
I do too.
Did you watch Dr. Ford's testimony?"
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did.
No.
Every minute.
No. Kamala Harris asked Brett Kavanaugh,
Right.
"Did you watch
yeah.
it?" And he said no. No, I didn't. I will. I meant to.
Yeah.
I was gonna.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but if somebody is making a claim against me and I have the opportunity to watch their testimony right before I'm going to go out and defend my name, I want to know what they had to say.
Yep.
Damn right. Damn right. Yeah. And let us also remember, I'm sorry, but somebody has got to give credit to Senator Jeff Flake
Yeah.
for being the one who stepped up and said, you know what? Yes, we do need an investigation here.
Yep.
Yeah.
If only for 1 week, if only it's limited to that. But he was the one brave enough to step up and say, hey, let's have somebody look into something, if anything, and just get us some answers.
Yep. And we'll see what that, that may be useful. It may not be. It may, but
you never know. But
I feel like you have to go through the. Again, they continue to reinforce this is a job interview. This is not a whatever.
That's right. But even as job interviews go, this one has got some serious implications.
Yes.
And there's some serious answers that we need.
Yep.
So good for him for standing up and saying, you know what, let's actually have somebody look into this and get us some answers.
Yep. And he was the perfect person, I think, to step into that role as someone who has no political skin in the game anymore, really.
Right.
He's done at the end of this term. So
yeah, he didn't have much to lose.
And was right there along John McCain, which I think he's
did you
stepping up
see
and
that clip
kind of
about
showing his kind of courage.
Who was that? I don't remember.
I think I think the only thing he was acting on it was a very highly emotional moment for him, and if you looked at the footage of him while the other senator that he went into the room with was talking, he was really you could see he was struggling, and knew that he had to do the right thing.
Yep.
Because at this
see
point,
on his face, he was having some emotional conflict there.
Because at this point, he's got no skin left in the game, so it could have been just as easy for him to go, yeah, whatever, yay, and not do anything. So that could have really gone either way.
Absolutely.
Hey, before we let you go, I wanted to talk about one more quick thing, very quick.
Bring it on.
There are people screaming out there about how there's no corroborating evidence. Nobody can confirm the events of Ford's claims or the other claims that there's, look, there's no witnesses that have come forward to corroborate the. I want to reference the law book of these Christian states of America. Turn with me, if you all will, to Deuteronomy 22. Let's see. Verse 28. If a man happens to meet a virgin girl who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies down with her, and they are discovered, the man who lay down with her must give the girl's father 50 silver shekels, and she will become his wife, because he humiliated her. He will not be allowed to divorce her as long as he lives. So they have to get married, give her father 50 silver shekels.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thus saith the Lord. Now, the other ones that I like so much, which are the, if you're in a city and you're raped and someone hears you, then you should bring them both out to the gates and stone them both. But if you're out in a field and no one hears you, then she obviously didn't cry loud enough and scream hard enough, and so
she must have been enjoying it.
It's fucking garbage. That's where this shit comes from.
I know.
This idea that, and the 2-witness rule, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
That's where all the people that have this opinion of nobody saw it happen, so it didn't happen.
Well, you know what? I wrote on my calendar
first of all,
Go on.
Okay, first of all, Sarah, you and I have something in common. We were both smart enough to marry beautiful women named Becca.
Oh.
Aw.
Look at that.
Yeah. My wife is also Becca.
Very nice. It's a good name.
She is born and raised in the Mormon Church.
Mhm.
At least until she reached the age of reason. And then she left.
Funny how that happens, huh?
Right. Did she get to listen to the Sam Young interview?
Mhm.
Make sure she listens to the Sam Young interview.
Oh, I will make sure of that. But, yeah, that whole biblical shit, I'm sorry. Can't get behind it. Because anybody tries to treat my wife like that, I'm bringing down my own biblical kind of justice on them. And, yeah, it just... I don't even know where to go with that. I'm just... Yeah.
Yep.
It's just so mind-blowing to think that people can actually believe and act that way towards the people they love.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you love somebody, why would you act that way towards them?
Yep.
And I'm going to leave it right there.
All right. Well, I appreciate you checking in with us. This was fun.
In.
Yeah.
It is my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me. And the promo bit that I submitted, like I said, I'm working on number 2.
I love it. That's great.
There is so much shit going on now. I'm constantly having to update it. So as soon as I get a constant version, I'll get that to you.
Awesome. Cool. We can't wait. That'll be great.
All
right.
Love you guys.
Love you too. Have a
Take
good
care.
one.
Bye.
In an even twistier twist of fate, a press advisor helping lead the Senate Judiciary Committee's response to the sexual assault allegations against Kavanaugh, 29-year-old Garrett Ventry stepped down last weekend over evidence that he was fired from a previous political job, in part because of a sexual harassment allegation against him.
What?
Seriously, is anybody noticing the theme here? This is all still part of the new segment, BT Dubs.
Yeah.
Ventry was a communications aide to the committee and had been helping coordinate the GOP's messaging in the wake of Christine Blasey Ford's claims of sexual assault. Ventry denied the allegations, which appeared to come from this position on staff in 2017 with the North Carolina House Majority Leader John Bell, where he worked as a social media advisor and faced an accusation of sexual harassment from a female employee of the North Carolina General Assembly's Republican staff. Judiciary Committee spokesperson Taylor Foy said in a statement, quote, "While he strongly denies allegations of wrongdoing, he decided to resign to avoid causing any distraction from the work of the committee," end quote. I'll take that. I'll take it. That's what Democratic Senator Al Franken did.
Yep.
When he was faced with allegations of sexual misconduct, he stepped down.
Yeah. Because that's the right thing to do.
Again, if you're Kavanaugh, the best move you can make is to say, like, listen, this is all some serious shit. Let's not rush.
Right.
Let's not rush through these things. I have nothing to hide. Let the FBI investigate me.
Right. I couldn't understand that when Durbin asked him,
right,
would you support an FBI investigation? I'll do whatever the committee wants. Would you support? And then Kamala Harris again pressed him.
Right.
And he just would not say, yes, yeah, let the FBI. Like, if I'm Kavanaugh and I surely have nothing to hide,
Yep.
come at me. Let's go.
Bring it. Let's do it. Yep. Because, again, if you're Kavanaugh, I would not want anyone to look back on this moment in history and see the citation mark next to my name.
Oh, by the way, 75 women
says,
as of present.
that says this is the guy who was swiftly confirmed at the expense of the American people's trust.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And at the most, that's at the least. At the most, he could just step down and say, listen, I don't want to do this anymore.
And how rich was it, Lindsey Graham, accusing the Democrats of trying to push out the... Isn't he the one who supported the motion to block Merrick Garland?
Oh, I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know that much about it, but I'm pretty sure he was the one who was all, yeah, sure, yeah,
Yeah.
Let's wait for the next president to put, you know. So that was rich. I couldn't believe the hypocrisy there.
The next story, you know, we often mention this kind of, we mention this as a kind of truth. The idea that it seems like transphobic Republican men are more of a threat than trans people. And it's really hard to be neutral when these headlines keep dropping. Ex-GOP senator who voted for anti-trans bathroom bill gets 15 years for child sex trafficking.
Only 15?
So let me say again, it's not us trans people that you should be worried about. More and more every week, it seems to be Republican men where the concern should be placed. Now, I'm positive we talked about this story when it broke. Ralph Shorty, former Oklahoma state senator, was arrested and charged in 2017 with child prostitution after being caught in a hotel room with an underage boy. Police found them together at a Super 8 motel in Moore, Oklahoma, where there was a, quote, strong smell of marijuana and an open box of condoms in the boy's bag. The boy was 17 at the time. Police also said they found sexually explicit exchanges on the teen's tablet where Shorty referred to him as baby boy and offered him cash in exchange for sexual stuff. So the update to this story, last week, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and after prison, he'll serve an additional 10 years supervised probation and pay a fine that could be up to $250,000.
Woo! Dan's in trouble.
We're almost done, Dan.
What's for dinner, Dan?
But I did want to take a moment here to talk about the internalized homophobia that ties into stories like this that make people think they have to hide and sneak around, whatever.
Which is,
and also age of consent laws, because in this case we're talking about a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Which, depending on your jurisdiction, may be legal to have. And how do we? It's weird the way we pick these lines. Like, you can have a driver's license. We trust you to drive a giant fucking hunk of steel and aluminum at 16 years old, but you can't smoke, you can't drink, and you can't fuck.
Yeah.
What? It just it makes no sense where we and I get it that we have to draw some arbitrary lines for legal reasons of where, you know, but each person comes to that age of reason and age of consent,
at different
I believe,
ages.
at different ages.
Yeah. Depends on how you've grown up, where you've, you know,
Sure.
what you've been exposed to.
I was having sex at 17. Sure.
Not me. I was getting drunk at 17. No, just kidding. No.
But wait, there's more. Because of course there is. We aren't quite done talking about men in politics behaving badly. And just to be clear, I'm really not trying to show any bias here.
You're not? Are you sure?
I
Okay.
promise you I'm not, but they all seem to be Republican men.
Very, very
And that's
partisan.
just, it's not like I'm not Google searching Republican men, sex crimes minus
we call
Democrat
out the
or whatever.
Democrat people.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there's
Yeah,
not
well, we
that
talked
many
about
of
Al
them. That's
Franken.
the problem. There's just not that many of them.
Republican Texas State Senator Charles Schwertner is next in the hot seat. The University of Texas is investigating an allegation that Texas State Senator Charles Schwertner sent sexually explicit text messages to a grad student, including a dick pic, according to the Austin American-Statesman. Schwertner denies the allegations, of course, but the Statesman's report, which is based on 3 unnamed senior UT officials, the alleged victim was a grad student who met Schwertner on campus, told him she wanted to work for the legislature, exchanged messages on LinkedIn, and then started texting on their phones.
Can I just share a little secret?
Can you not whisper, because it doesn't come out when I run it through
To
the processor?
all of the old white men, we don't like the dick pics.
No.
Knock it off.
Right?
So disturbing.
Young white men, too. Listen.
Yeah, no, it's true.
As someone who has sent a dick pic in my day.
Yeah, it's just not. No, I don't want to.
Don't do it. And and here's the thing about that, right? While we're talking about stupid gender roles, an argument I heard one time was like, women don't want to see that. Why would you think that that's okay? Would you want me to send you unsolicited pictures of my junk? Yes, we do.
That's the thing.
That's the men's position.
Like,
is like,
yeah.
yes, absolutely. I want to see
exactly
everything.
Like I think men are just most, and
I know we're talking in we're talking in generalities.
take this how you are.
Right.
Most men are more visually
stimulated,
where women want the whispers in the ear and the caresses
the romance,
and the touches
yeah,
and the
sure.
like.
And I can tell you that has changed in me through the hormone change process.
It's a very interesting thing because you have two completely different, and then you're expected to put that together somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so the allegation goes like this. During an otherwise professional conversation, he texted the victim, quote, "I just really want to fuck you," end quote.
Ugh.
He also reportedly sent her an image of what appeared to be his genitals that was taken in the shower. The student reported all of this to the school.
And the next day he had to go to Verizon to get a brand
And
new phone.
officials have seen this exchange. School officials have seen this text exchange.
Wow.
And they launched an investigation. His state Senate profile on their website describes him as, quote, a physician, family man, business owner, and lifelong conservative.
Of course.
And let me just say, from now on, if you describe yourself as a family man, I'm just going to assume that you're a monster. They're almost always lifelong conservative family men. And of course, his claim to fame is in championing bills that would restrict abortion rights. Because that's what you do. But let's not forget, we're in election season.
Of course.
So he faces Democrat Meg Walsh in November.
Oh, he's dead.
But don't get your hopes up just yet.
No. Oh.
Of the number of people voting in District 5 in the primary, Republicans outnumbered Democrats more than 2-1.
Ooh.
So of all the people who voted in the Republican primary, 66,000 total votes to 31,000 total votes in the Democratic primary.
Sounds like we need to be registering some voters out in that.
Right, out in District 5 in Texas. So who knows if this story, if this this gets out there, if that would be enough to move voters, into the other camp and away from this asshat, or assuming he doesn't resign or drop out of the race. Like
right.
That's an option that he could do too.
Russell says, "I've never sent a dick pic to anyone, ... that hasn't asked for one first."
That was more than 3 dots.
Well, ellipsis.
Yes. So we'll end the show, as we often do, with the best stories. Start with
Florida man.
This is
whatever the song is.
This is no contest
Florida
this
man.
week. I don't even know why I'm
Florida
reading these.
man.
Palm Coast, Florida man Corey Hatzel, 30, was arrested on Monday morning after a woman called police around 1 a.m. saying Hatzel was chasing her boyfriend and, quote, trying to fight him. The best part of this story, the encounter started by a Winn-Dixie, the boyfriend riding his bike, and after a short chase ended up at a Chick-fil-A.
Of course, because why not? Were they wearing cow suits?
Hatzel began removing clothes. No. That's your answer. As you do when you're about to fight. And he kept yelling at the woman's boyfriend. Quote, "You're gay for looking at my penis."
What the fuck?
End quote. When deputies arrived, Hatzel had dried blood on his nose and wouldn't tell police his name. He yelled at multiple vehicles driving by to look at his genitals while authorities tried to get him to put shorts on. He was charged with obstruction, but the woman and her boyfriend declined to press charges for indecent exposure. So here's another example of that garbage homophobia, like looking at a penis makes you gay. Shut up.
Right?
Oh, wasn't it Ron White did it?
Do you watch porn?
Yeah, Ron White did a bit about that.
Yeah, like, that's exactly what went through my head just now. Like, get out of my head.
Sure, I like porn. Oh yeah, well, do you like the guy to have a small, half-flaccid penis? No, I like big, hard, throbbing cock. I love Ron White.
I love Ron White. Oh, so good.
But
okay.
that is steeped in this,
yes, absolutely.
This homophobia. All right, the second story.
This is the winner.
Yes. A Florida grandmother.
Oh, Granny's in the news again.
In Titusville opened her blinds around 2 a.m. Friday morning, expecting to see her cat on the back porch, only to find a nude man standing there.
What's with all these naked men?
Welcome to Florida. Penelope Pedersen, who once worked in security and law enforcement, decided to give the intruder a fright. She popped out her teeth and shouted, "Grandma, no teeth!"
What the fuck?
Grandma, no teeth. The intruder.
Grandma, no teeth. That's the title of the show. Grandma, no teeth.
The intruder, 28-year-old Axel Rivera,
Oh my gosh,
was
'cause
arrested.
Of course, his name is Axel.
Of course it is. Was arrested on charges of burglary and exposing sexual organs, and is being held at the Brevard County Jail on $20,000
Burglary?
bail.
He was on her porch.
Yeah, it's breaking into your property.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no choice tonight. It's obviously Grandma No
It's
Teeth.
obviously denture defense.
Oh, God. I like that, too.
Oh, my gosh.
But
Yeah.
what saith the chat?
Russell says, bias much, Becca.
I guess.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, of course I am. That's amazing. Actually.
I can't title the show Grandma No Teeth. I'm sorry,
No.
guys. I also wanted to... hang on, I wrote it down. I also wanted to title the show Outer Darkness.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
But for promotional
Yeah.
visibility's sake, it's got to be something about Protect LDS Children.
Yeah.
So.
How about Protect
Right.
LDS
Yeah.
Children? Okay.
Yeah.
Rolling on the floor in the chat room. Nobody's voting. I guess nobody's voting. I guess we're the end of the show.
It's obviously Grandma No Teeth.
Obviously. I think everybody is just, Oh, Victoria says grandma. Dan's probably already eating dinner, so he can't vote because he's eating dinner.
Right.
He's having pork chops.
Ooh. Sounds good.
Yeah, it does. Oh.
Okay.
Nope, Dan voted for look at my junk. Russell says grandma no teeth.
Okay, so let's wrap the show. Thank you all for listening tonight.
Yeah.
That was another great
Good.
episode. We want a big thank you to Sam Young for coming on the show, and again,
Yes.
like super quick notice. Like I emailed him
Yeah.
earlier this week and was like, "Hey, can you come on the show sometime?
Mhm.
Availability is wide open." And he was like, "How's this weekend?"
Yep.
Perfect. Let's do it. ProtectLDSChildren.org is the website. If you want to go get involved, sign the petition, please do. Again, like these are the abuses by the church that we bitch about every week. And here's a guy who's really trying to step up and make a change. And again, remember, like from his position, though he's been excommunicated, he's still a believer. He still considers himself to be a believing Mormon, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's doing this from an internal perspective of wanting to make his church, even though they kicked him out, his church a safer place for children. And I think
I feel like
that's good.
He's got the right moral compass. Like he's absorbing those Christ-like qualities that he learned. Like just to hear him talk about it, I think that it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That there aren't more Christians that actually act like Christians. So I was glad to hear the way that he kind of came to that.
And I have to apologize to the 80% of our listeners who were throwing shit while he was talking about faith and hope, and I wasn't pushing back or responding. And
She was internally screaming. I'm sure.
I don't know if you could see it on my face, but that's a discussion for another time.
It really
right?
is.
This is about
Yeah.
kids and changing the policy
Yeah,
and making
absolutely.
change. And if you want to come on again,
Right.
Sam, and
We'll
talk
talk about that.
have a street epistemology conversation, we can certainly do that. A big thank you to our patrons as always. And thank you for Victoria for calling in. That was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do more of that as we're going down the future here. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week here on the Facebook Live, Saturday, 8 p.m. You've been listening to Sarah Talk.
SarahTalk is made possible by listener support. Visit patreon.com/SarahTalk to become a patron and help keep this program going. Contact Sarah and Company by email at producer@sarahtalk.com or call 224-40-SARAH. That's 224-407-2724. And follow us on social media, facebook.com/SarahTalkRadio and on Twitter @SarahTalkRadio. The opinions and information provided on this show are intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions are solely that of the hosts and their guests. We make no representations as to accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or validity of any information and will not be liable for any errors or damages. Sarah Talk is a production of Sarah Austin Media.